because we know they're the enemy.
The president's talk about Antifa has raised some questions.
Yeah, Trump said on social media he will designate it a, quote, major terrorist organization. So what is the group really, and what can the government do to it?
NPR domestic extremism correspondent Odette Youssef is covering this. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to remind people of the backdrop. Charlie Kirk was murdered. There's a suspect in custody in Utah. Republicans, some of them, though, were immediately saying, quote, they killed Charlie Kirk, and the administration began talking of rolling up its political critics, critical groups. Where does Antifa fit into all that?
Well, Antifa is shorthand for anti-fascist, and it's really more of a movement than a cohesive organization. But top Republican leaders, including President Trump and Senator Ted Cruz, have suggested without evidence that Antifa or purported funders of Antifa may be involved in the Kirk killing. Now, the man who is charged with that crime does not have any known affiliation with Antifa, and so far he's the only person charged in connection with the killing. But this focus on funders is notable because it distinguishes this round of scrutiny from what happened in 2020. You may recall, Steve, back then, President Trump called for Antifa to be designated a terrorist group. That failed in large part because, again, it's not a centralized organization, but also because there is simply no legal mechanism to do this.
What do you mean by that? Because when he says designate them as a terrorist group, it sounds very legal.
So there is a process to designate certain groups as foreign terrorist organizations. So think ISIS, Al-Qaeda. That process lies with the State Department, and it requires proof of a foreign connection. But there is no such process or legal authority right now to do the same with domestic groups. And the reason is that such a designation could infringe on Americans' First Amendment rights.
So much discussion of the First Amendment now. When the president uses his First Amendment right to say this on social media, are there any teeth behind it?
Well, there are still a couple of reasons to track this, I'm told. First, in 2020, Trump was also calling for the designation of Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. It didn't happen then, but it has happened now. And so this expansion in the application of the term terrorist is already underway. Also, even a rhetorical conflation of Antifa with terrorism has been shown to have real-world consequences. I spoke with Faiza Patel at the Brennan Center for Justice. She said when that happened in 2020, law enforcement at every level turned their attention and resources toward finding Antifa at protests and trying to establish that it was a national organization. Those efforts failed. But this time, Patel says the impacts could be even broader.
It's pretty clear from the president's tweet that he is focused on the funding of these groups, right? And what that means is that there's potentially a broad array of civil society organizations that can be caught up in this as being potentially linked to anti-fascism in some way or the other.
And I'll add, Steve, yesterday on Air Force One, NPR asked the president how he would go after Antifa since it's more of an ideology than a formal organization. He said, we're going to find out, and then asked our colleague if Antifa had anything to do with NPR.
Okay, that's NPR domestic extremism correspondent Odette Youssef. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All these companies came out and they said, we'll give you the world for free, just give us your data. And a lot of people said, awesome. And we punted on privacy.
Google is supposed to share some of its data on what people search for online with its competitors. That's according to a federal judge's recent ruling in an antitrust case. Tech and privacy experts are wondering what that means for user privacy. NPR's Jacqueline Diaz has more on what's at stake, and we'll just note Google is a financial supporter of NPR, and we cover it like any other company.
Judge Ahmet Mehta's decision was meant to punish Google for holding a monopoly in the search engine market. The goal of sharing this user search data is to give other companies a chance at competing with this multi-trillion-dollar company.
Data is the currency upon which this entire ecosystem was created, and it's the currency upon which Google built its wealth. And so now you're seeing a redistribution of that currency to other competitors.
Betsy Cooper is a cybersecurity expert and the director of the Aspen Institute's Policy Academy. But like other tech experts, she wonders about the ethical implications for Google users who never intended for their data to be used by a company other than, well, Google.
The surprise now is that Google is going to share that data with other companies that are then going to be able to use that data for purposes we never imagined.
Google already shares some aggregated user information with advertisers or business partners. That could include search trends or how often people use Google. But the big deal here is that now Google has to give other companies a look at what's called click and query data. When you type something into Google, like Italian restaurants or weather near me, that is the query data, and the results you click on are the click data.
So there are privacy concerns here.
Because that data can be really sensitive, says Jonathan Trey. He's a senior scientist at UC Berkeley's Center for Human Compatible AI.
So say a user searches for a rare disease.
That search could be potentially linked to their IP address, essentially a digital address of a computer or phone connected to the web. It could give away their city or even which part of the city they live in.
Well, if you know what the disease was and you know where they were, you may be able to match that with news articles or potentially other information to figure out who they were.
In his ruling, Judge Mehta used the same example to acknowledge the risks to user privacy. The Justice Department and Google both declined interviews for this story, but they both have recognized these data privacy risks. Still, the Justice Department and Judge Mehta say there are ways to protect users' identities. Mehta ordered a 5-person technical oversight committee to decide which companies can get this data and how to keep it safe. Here's Cooper again.
The technical committee is going to have a ton of power, and who sits on that committee is going to make a huge difference in the outcomes on data privacy, on what gets shared, and on the competitive issues here in this case.
But it's still not clear who will be chosen for the committee or when their work will begin. And Google is expected to appeal the ruling, which could delay all of these decisions for a long time. Jacqueline Diaz, NPR News.
Since you're my special friend, come closer for a special treat. I'm going to let you touch me in a special place.
It is never okay to touch someone else's private parts. Your mom and dad will tell you so.
Charleston County judge is preparing to spend the next several nights in the same jail where he sentenced defendants to serve time. James Gosnell Jr. is charged with possessing child sex abuse materials. Our Emily Deanne was in federal court this morning. She shares the chilling details of the case and what's next.
James Gosnell Jr. appeared in a familiar place, the courtroom, but this time as the defendant. The now suspended magistrate judge faces serious charges. If convicted, he could spend several years behind bars. Federal authorities arrested the 68-year-old at his Charleston home yesterday. This investigation started thanks to a tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Investigators traced Gosnell's actions to online payments made in November of 2024, which linked Gosnell's phone number, email, and home address. A search of his home revealed the most chilling details, multiple videos and images of child sex abuse, including content involving infants and toddlers. U.S. District Judge Molly Cherry did not grant bond today, deferring that decision until a hearing Monday. Gosnell's attorney not happy with that decision.
I don't think that that's the way it should have been done, but she's the judge, she ruled, and so that's what we live with. So we come back Monday and fight again.
Gosnell has presided over cases for decades in Charleston County, including the initial appearance of the Emmanuel 9 shooter, where he's accused of making controversial comments. His attorney is concerned for his safety in jail.
He has been the bond judge on some of the cases that are inmates are there. He's been the preliminary hearing judge on some of the cases that are there. He's issued warrants for some of the people that are there. So there are all sorts of potential problems.
In regards to those safety concerns, we're told the Marshal's Office and Charleston County's Sheriff Detention Officers will keep Gosnell in appropriate quarters at the Al Cannon Detention Center. Monday's hearing could determine if he will be held without bond until trial. We'll be inside that courtroom and we'll bring you new details as they emerge. Reporting in downtown Charleston, I'm Emily Deanne.
The South Carolina Supreme Court suspended him from the bench, saying, quote, his continued service would pose a substantial threat of serious harm to the public and the administration of justice. This is a developing story. You can find more coverage of this case at any time on our website, abcnews4.com.
If any black person who forgets that is forgetting a very important fundamental. He couldn't even been running. His name would have not been known. He wouldn't have had a white mother in Kansas. Kansas.
That breaking news is out of Kansas City, Kansas. Prosecutors are now charging a Wyandotte County deputy with second-degree murder. We were the first to bring you this as breaking news last week. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kelly Eckerman. Laura has the night off.
And I'm Chris Katz. The coroner ruled the death of Wyandotte County Jail inmate Charles Adair was a homicide. KMBC 9 News investigative reporter Matt Fleener has been following this story since the beginning. He's live in downtown KCK where the DA announced those charges this afternoon. Matt?
Yeah, Chris and Kelly did. Mark Dupree just held that press conference 4:30 this afternoon about what happened here at the Wyandotte County Detention Center back on July 5th. He was short on details, he said, due to ethical rules, but Charles Adair died while in custody, again, July 5th. An autopsy showed a deputy knelt on Adair's back, causing him not to breathe. Today, Dupree filed a second-degree murder charge against Richard Fatherly, or in the alternative, an involuntary manslaughter charge. Now, Fatherly is a deputy who's worked inside the jail for a little more than a year. Because of ethical rules, Dupree stopped short of saying Fatherly was the one that knelt on Adair's back. And KMBC 9 Investigates asked if he would release video to show why he brought the charges against the detention officer.
All information, video and non, now that it is a foul charge in case, then that all of that information will be seen by the judge, and once it is seen by the judge at the preliminary hearing, then it will be made available in court, but via the rules of ethics, I cannot release any information. Thank you, guys.
So again, not a lot of information that came out of today's press conference, but sources are telling us that folks in the law enforcement community are not happy about this, but the DA said he did speak with Charles Adair's family just to make sure that they knew about all of this. Again, quite a case we'll continue to cover. Live in KCK, Matt Fleener, KMBC 9 News.
Okay, there are many, many religions throughout the planet. Now, of all the religions, what is the strongest one? And that's what I came up with. So I decided to put it in capital letters, the religion of white supremacy.
Every year, millions of tourists follow Boston's Freedom Trail. It's a red brick path through the city that visits key sites in America's revolutionary history. And one of those sites is historic King's Chapel. Yesterday, the church debuted a new monument which shines a bright light on Boston's connection to slavery. Megan Smith from GBH was there.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Unbound! Unbound!
King's Chapel unveiled the dramatic 14-foot sculpture on its property in downtown Boston Sunday. The title is Unbound. It depicts a black woman holding a bird cage, releasing birds to freedom. The birds honor the 219 people who were enslaved by the church's original members and ministers.
It's a moment, an important moment for this city, for this country, and it's going to bring about the healing that we all need.
Rashonda Moore Evans is part of the congregation's memorial committee.
She is this large black woman in this amazing white dress that accentuates her beautiful dark skin with an amazing hair texture.
Artist Harmonia Rosales designed the sculpture. She was struck that so many onlookers had gathered around the church to learn more.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, that everybody's curious, everybody is loving the sculpture, and that's all I hope for.
Massachusetts resident Leslie Robbins was wandering by King's Chapel and stopped when she saw the excitement.
I think it's important to honor the enslaved people that have come to Boston against their will.
The unveiling comes at a time when cultural institutions across the country are under pressure to roll back conversations about slavery and racism. A public artwork like this can expand people's understanding of history. That's according to Jadi Amazi, a principal with Mass Design Group who partnered with Rosales to create the memorial.
The significance of a piece like this in Boston and on the Freedom Trail is that it layers what people understand to be the Freedom Trail.
King's Chapel was founded in 1686 as an Anglican church and still operates as a Unitarian congregation today. It's one of the 16 sites on Boston's Freedom Trail. Amazi says the statue is an invitation to learn more of Boston's story.
Historically, the Freedom Trail was about America's freedom, right? And was telling a very one-sided story of said freedom.
Dean Deniston is on the congregation's memorial committee. He says many people don't realize slavery's role in colonial New England.
I always like to say that of the original 13 colonies, slavery was legal in all 13 colonies at the time. But it was never talked about, especially here.
Many original King's Chapel worshipers were business leaders with connections to the slave trade and plantations in the Caribbean. Reverend Joy Fallon has led the congregation since 2013 and guided efforts to uncover its history.
I felt because we're on the Freedom Trail, we had a special moral obligation to tell the truth.
And slavery is part of that truth. At a worship service Sunday, King's Chapel congregants read the names of the 219 enslaved people who were owned by members of the church.
Mingo, Mira, Toby, Tom, unnamed man.
And they all sang, "Lift Every Voice and Sing," often called the Black National Anthem.
Bless our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world we forget.
For NPR News, I'm Megan Smith in Boston.
National parks across the country face a deadline today. The Trump administration had instructed them to address any signs, statues, or memorials it believes reflect negatively on the country. Now, that executive order was issued back in March, and it was named Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. NPR's Frank Langfitt has been reporting on this story. So, Frank, why did President Trump order this review in the first place?
Well, he says over the past decade there's been an attempt to rewrite our history, driven by left-wing ideology instead of truth. And he wants the parks to focus on what he says instead the nation's great achievements and not disparage Americans who are either past or living. He's also ordered a similar review of the Smithsonian museums.
Okay, so there are 63 national parks all over the United States. I mean, how many items is the Park Service looking at? I mean, what kind of a job is this?
Yeah, I was talking to Park Service people yesterday, and they were saying that they're looking at more than 1,000 items that employees have reported around the country. You know, most of this content revolves around the history of slavery. For instance, the administration there's this graphic photo taken down at one park. It's of an enslaved man who was whipped so hard that he has scars on his back. And the Washington Post first reported this. But park employees, they're also flagging a variety of other topics. I'll give you some examples. Signs that address sea level rise and climate change at Cape Hatteras National Seashore is one. Others that explain how Native Americans were forced off parkland. And there are even references to the impact of urbanization and agriculture on the Everglades. There was one park employee who wrote that could, quote, be seen as disparaging the development of industrial America.
All right, now, you've been talking to people inside the Park Service. Are they on board with all this?
Well, I mean, some no doubt do agree with the president and are helping with this, but the others I've talked to say that most people don't like it. They say employees are mostly flagging these signs so as to avoid getting into trouble. And they think that this is really an attempt to erase uncomfortable parts of the country's history and control intellectual discourse. Now, park employees I've talked to, they don't want us to use their names. They're afraid of being fired. But one described the Trump administration like this, quote, they want to control the narrative. If you control the narrative, you control the people.
The people. Okay, so speaking of the people, have park visitors had anything to say?
Well, over the summer, the Park Service provided these QR codes for visitors to comment on any signs that they thought needed to be changed. And I was leaked about 2,200 of these, and I read through them. And there's one visitor who flagged a sign on territorial expansion. It said Native Americans were, quote, starved into submission to the white man's will. And the visitor found that was, pretty stark and reductive. But critiques like that were really rare. Only a tiny percentage of people actually used the QR codes to criticize the signs. Others said the signs didn't go far enough, and they deplored this whole process.
So, Frank, what will happen then to the signs and other items that the government decides do not meet the president's mandate?
Well, some say that, these signs are some will be edited. Others will be taken down, and probably some will be replaced. There's a group I was talking to called Save Our Signs, and they've asked park visitors to photograph as many of these signs as possible to capture those that may disappear. So far, they've received nearly 8,000 photos, and what they say they're trying to do is capture all the work that the park employees have done to explain America's history so that it's not actually erased in this process.
All right, that's NPR national correspondent Frank Langford. Frank, thanks.
Globalization mandates, of course, from the most powerful white people, these blackouts. You have a totally energy independent state like Texas, plenty of natural gas, oil, gasoline, coal. They were forced to keep up with the mandates and convert up to 20% of their power grid to green energy by 2021. Green energy being wind, solar, hydro, battery, etc. So that 20% freezes over. And the 80% that's left, that always has worked, the oil, the coal, the gas, is not enough to supply the rest of the state. So they have to cut off certain parts of the grid to keep it working. And this is what's going to happen in 2025 when that green energy is mandated to be 50% of the grid. What happens when we have a snowstorm then? And what happens in Chicago and New York? I mean, where it's cold most of the year here. So this green energy thing that they've been pushing through this Green New Deal, and 5 years ago this wanted to happen in Texas. But they were forced to take fully, perfectly functioning parts of their grid and convert it to these green energy. And now that green energy freezes over and the rest of the grid is all vulnerable.
Now to the latest on President Trump's war on wind power. Last month, the administration abruptly halted construction on a nearly finished $6 billion 65-turbine wind farm off the coast of New England known as Revolution Wind. The holdup has put thousands out of work and raises big questions about not just the future of this project, but similar efforts across the eastern seaboard. Science correspondent Miles O'Brien's been covering it all. He joins us now from Groton, Connecticut. So, Miles, we can see this huge project behind you. I'm assuming that's part of Revolution Wind. Why has it been such a big deal in this battle over wind power?
It's a big deal because it's a big project, Amna. 700 megawatts, which equates to power for 350,000 homes in Rhode Island and Connecticut. It's run by a company called Ørsted out of Denmark. Over my shoulder, you'll see a giant vessel, which is a wind turbine installation vessel. Vessels like these cost more than $260,000 a day. So the meter is running on a ship that should be out 20 miles from where I am, doing its work to finish this project, which is at the 80% completion state. I saw this machine in action latter part of last year in December. It's an extraordinary thing. That whole thing jacks up, and the turbines are built and the blades are put on. The project is big, and its sudden stop is a big loss for the economy here. I sat down with the governor of Rhode Island, Dan McKee.
I don't think the Trump administration really understands the consequences of this action, right? And the job loss, the energy loss, the loss of in terms of our ability to compete. And then the other thing that it sends is the signal to businesses. What are permits worth if all of a sudden, when you're 80% in a project, regardless of what the project is, that somehow the federal government is not going to honor those permits?
So, yeah, the governor says he is willing to engage in a political deal. There have been other threats by the Trump administration to shut down wind projects. Empire Wind in New York is still going after a close call. Vineyard Wind to the north of here in Massachusetts is still going. The governor said he will entertain even a pipeline deal, a gas pipeline deal, if that's what it would take. But so far, no, there's no deal on the table. He would like an audience with the president, Amna.
So, Miles, 80% completed and then abruptly halted. What justification did the Trump administration give for why this project was stopped?
Well, the Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, says wind and solar are worthless. Those are his words. He says because of the intermittency, they don't work at nighttime if it's solar or when the wind is not blowing when it comes to wind. And the Secretary of Interior, Doug Burgum, has said this project has not been vetted, that it was fast-tracked. But the initial permitting for this actually goes back to 2011. For Revolution Wind specifically, in 2019, the whole process began. The Defense Department has looked at this at least a couple of times, and yet they say there is a national security issue. Here's Doug Burgum.
Yes, they were permitted, but they got moved through a very fast, ideologically driven permitting process. We've been asked, as part of an executive order from the president, to take a whole-of-government approach to review those. I think the fact that the subsidies have been either cut back or limited means that it's likely that there will not be future offshore wind built in America.
So that initial environmental assessment goes way back. And the other issue that's come up again, time and again is the cost. The cost of this electricity is locked in for the next 20 years at 9.8 cents per kilowatt hour. That is about half of what electricity costs by other sources in this part of the world. So it is cheaper power. It is ready to go online. Meanwhile, there's a lot of workers that are feeling the hurt in this. I spoke yesterday to a painter who's worked on these projects for a couple of years, 10 years of painting experience. He goes out for 12 weeks at a time, Amna, and works overtime out offshore and makes $75,000. It's enough to get him through the year, and he needs the money. He's got 6 kids. I also, earlier today, went out with a fisherman, Gary Yerman, and a lot of fishermen have been against this. And Gary, in particular, is a strong Trump supporter. He has started a business which allows fishermen to provide security and other services to the wind farms. It's been a real boon to them during their quiet times. Listen to Gary.
You know, a lot of people think Trump's crazy, so on and so forth. And there's a lot of money that's been spent to, create this green energy, which I believe that we need more energy in this country. And I don't understand why. So, yeah, I think that it just gives the opposition more, fuel to, go against Donald Trump. So I think politically it could go against him.
So the big picture here, Amna, is that there's wind projects out there, about a half a dozen of them, including this one, which ultimately represent enough power to generate electricity for 11 million homes up and down the eastern seaboard by 2030. That was the Biden administration goal. But the Trump administration simply cannot tolerate wind. The president is a longtime opponent of it from the time when a wind turbine, or a series of them, were installed off his golf course in Scotland. So the country, and this region in particular, is at an energy turning point. This is cheap electricity. In many cases, it's built. And many people here are wondering what the logic is in leaving those pylons just standing there, rusting in the ocean.
That is our science correspondent, Miles O'Brien, reporting from Groton, Connecticut tonight. Miles, thank you so much.
Bright and early on a Saturday morning in August, Charles Johnson waits in a line that wraps around the building at the Lower 9 Food Pantry. It's just past 8 a.m. and it's already hot.
This heat feels like after a hurricane passed. That's how it feels now, but it never was like that before, because when a hurricane passed, man, you got tremendous heat, and that's how it feels sometimes.
From where we're standing, you can see the mural painted over where the Industrial Canal flood wall breached after Hurricane Katrina, flooding the entire Lower 9th Ward. Climate change helped make Katrina the devastating storm that it was. It's also making summers in New Orleans more than 4 degrees hotter since the 1970s, and making air conditioners have to work harder, racking up utility bills, taking a heavy toll on seniors with fixed incomes, like Johnson.
That's why I'm here in this line right now. I mean, with the prices of food and all the utility bills and stuff like that, it's kind of have to cut back on other things.
Heat affects seniors differently. The older we get, the less efficient our bodies get. We sweat less, get dehydrated more easily. The risk of heat stroke is much greater, and medical conditions can make it worse. And the heat can feel inescapable. Katrina destroyed more than 200,000 trees in the city, creating what are known as heat islands in places like the Ninth Ward, making it feel more than 8 degrees hotter. Johnson tries to use less AC at night to help lower his bill. But New Orleans is also seeing rising nighttime temperatures.
And I do get up sometime and just wrap it back up because it'd be too hot. It wakes me out of sleep.
What you spend on your utility bill versus how much money you have is a concept called energy burden.
And it really does not affect everyone equally. I mean, that really is at the heart of the issue.
Forrest Bradley Wright is the State and Utility Policy Director at the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy.
If you're on fixed income, with less income to begin with, that's a much larger percentage of your total financial resources paying that energy bill.
A high energy burden means people may have to make trade-offs, spending less on things like groceries, doctor visits, and medications. For seniors, that can mean their health is put in even more jeopardy. Compounding the problem in New Orleans is the fact that many homes are older and less efficient.
Your AC and heat are responsible for about 55 to 60% of your bill.
Derek Mills is the manager of the Energy Smart program at Entergy New Orleans. He says for people with lower incomes, they can provide free efficiency upgrades to their homes.
We go from, pretty big measures like giving rebates on central ACs or to things as small as just changing from incandescent light bulbs to LED light bulbs.
A more efficient home can help lower the amount of energy it uses, but it can't reduce the rates, the cost of electricity. Those are proposed by the power company, Entergy.
We need to make Entergy pay more.
Nick Laborde ran for a seat on Louisiana's Public Service Commission, or PSC. Now, there's an entire other story on what the PSC is and how it works.
It's one of the most powerful elected bodies in our state, but most people don't even know that it exists.
What's important to know is that the PSC regulates public utilities in Louisiana. If Entergy wants to do something like raise rates, it has to be approved by the PSC, except in New Orleans, which is the only city in the country that regulates utilities when there's a statewide agency in place. And those rates have gotten higher and higher, with additional charges for things like upgrades and repairs for damage caused by hurricanes.
We still have storm charges from storms less than 20 years ago. We'll have them for 20-ish more years, and we're going to get even more because hurricanes are still going to come.
For seniors with lower fixed incomes in New Orleans' Ninth Ward, it's a vicious cycle with no end in sight. For the Gulf States Newsroom, I'm Drew Hawkins.
This question, why is this stuff happening? The New York Times editorial today. The Trump effect. See, this is what I'm doing with my money, buying newspapers like Dick Gregory. The Trump effect and how it spreads. It says we are on the brink, under Trump, on the brink of fascism. New York Times, all the news that's fit to print, editorial 12/10/2015. I say fascism is end-stage white supremacy. See, just like in Nazi Germany. Fascism, system of racism, white supremacy, determined to survive.
You can't believe that this happened on our campus. It's something that we've never had to deal with, and it's just unfortunate. It should never happen.
Meharry Medical College targeted this week of a message of racial hate. Good evening and welcome to News 2 at 5. I'm Bob Mueller.
And I'm Haley Wilkes. News 2's Caitlin Quisenberry shows us how this is just the latest in a series of threats impacting HBCU communities all across the country.
It's just a good place to learn and be around like-minded people.
Sharing resources, making sure everyone is good mentally, academically, and just all around a lot of support here on campus.
We call it the Meharry family, and we live and breathe it every day.
With more than 1,400 students on campus, Meharry is known for training future doctors and health leaders. But Wednesday, that spirit of unity was shaken after a racial slur saying, quote, blank should die, was found chalked on a campus parking garage.
Unfortunately, I wasn't surprised, but I mean, it is scary. I live here. I go to school here. Like, nobody wants to hear there's like a threat.
Just full of hate, and we just students trying to make the world better, so.
The university says it immediately removed the graffiti and increased security patrols. Still, some students tell me it has changed how they think about getting to and from class.
It's something that I have to be aware of. Like, do I want to go to the library once it gets dark? Like, maybe I have to think about, like, walking with somebody. I mean, you should do that anyway, but just being more vigilant now that, like, there was an open threat.
I definitely make it a habit if I'm here late at night to be with a group or be on the phone with someone.
This incident comes just days after multiple HBCUs across the country were locked down for threats that the FBI later confirmed were hoaxes. While no direct threats were made to TSU or Fisk University, both Nashville campuses went on high alert.
It really is the toxicity of our environment right now. Again, there's really no place for it. It's something that we've really got to change, and I don't know that there's a sense of normalcy or will ever have normalcy.
The senior VP for Student Affairs says Meharry encourages students to take advantage of the spaces available for students to talk.
Student wellness is forefront of our mind.
Moving forward, staff and students are preaching a message of unity.
We need to leave this place, our world, in a better place, and let's just come together to make sure we do so.
So there's nothing like an HBCU. You know, I would like for us to exist safely, though.
In Nashville, Caitlin Quisenberry, News 2.
We reached out to Metro Police for an update on the investigation. They responded saying the graffiti was immediately removed and, quote, the person responsible has not been identified. Haley.
Thank you, Caitlin.
I'm getting in the elevator, and these two high school white boys tried to get on with me, and I just dove off. I said, y'all ain't killing me. I am scared of young white boys. If you white and under 21, I am running for the hill. What the hell is wrong with these white kids shooting up the school?
At Evergreen Lake, the community will gather to support Evergreen High School students. There will be therapy animals and music. Last week, a 16-year-old shot 2 classmates before taking his own life. Police believe the young assailant had been radicalized, but haven't expounded. Children shooting children, always difficult to wrap our minds around. So joining us is family therapist Craig Nippenberg of Denver. He wrote a book about adolescent brain development titled Wired and Connected. And Craig, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much, Ryan.
It appears the shooter was radicalized online, that he had a fascination with previous attacks. The Anti-Defamation League finds he'd been on a site where people post and interact with extremely graphic, violent content. Based on your understanding of the teenage brain, how might a young person be uniquely affected by an environment like that?
Yeah, so if you think about so we have to think about the brains of all teens, and there's 3 critical areas for them in development. The brain is just massively growing. So first, in the prefrontal cortex, where we have our stop mechanisms for impulse control, the functioning of that drops about in half. At the same time, the emotions, which the prefrontal cortex is supposed to slow down and stop, double in teenagers. So their hormone systems light up, and they have twice the emotion as children or as adults.
So this almost explosive emotion,
and
then the governor on it, the brakes, are at essentially half capacity.
Half capacity.
Okay, and then I think there was a third.
And the third one is what's called the nonverbal system, which is what helps us be social creatures and experience empathy, hopefully. But the nonverbal system just explodes in the teen brain. So everything's about connecting with friends, being in a group, reading each other. There's sarcasm, there's politicking, all of that going on. And the good phrase is that they're learning how to be future leaders, but it's not always very nice.
And there is a craving then to be to belong. To belong.
Yes.
And I am guessing that bad actors online know this.
Yes. And con men know that. Bad actors know that. And they recruit kids who, we know in the research of past school shootings, the perpetrators often have sort of three traits. One is they tend to be very rigid thinkers, sort of black and white, I'm right, you're wrong, don't really see the gray areas. They often have obsessive fantasies and obsessive hobbies. And the third is they're often socially isolated, so they don't fit in. So there's people out there online, especially on social media apps, on the dark web, that know they're out there and they're following. And those kids, they're just looking for an answer.
Everything you've described becomes a perfect storm, potentially.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, if a kid wants to hide their online activity from their parents, can anything truly stop them?
That's a tough one. I wish I had an answer for that, because almost every time you see something on here's how to protect your kids on social media, they figure it out. They know ways around it. In fact, several years ago, the Wall Street Journal family person said she was no longer going to cover stories on how to protect your kids on the social media and phones, because they get around it. They just figure it out. They're ahead of the adults.
Well, Craig, you have to have better advice for us than that.
Well, I do have some in that regard. So first of all, start young. Well, I always promote waiting till at least 16 before you give your kid a smartphone. But it's digital awareness starts young. And just like you teach your little ones about safe people and unsafe people, they need to learn what's safe and what's not safe online, and how online platforms, gaming, social media manipulate you. It basically hijacks your brain.
I mean, I remember thinking of this as stranger danger when I was a kid, and it was always the fear of someone with a van that was going to put you in
the white van,
with candy. This is almost an online version of that.
It is. Very much so. And what they do is they offer, so when someone starts exploring things, the algorithms, they start you out with the vetted kind of popular post on it, whatever topic it is. It could be self-harm, it could be eating disorders, it could be suicide or extremist thoughts. And they start you out with simple ones, and then the algorithm picks up that you liked it, and then they feed more to you, and they keep feeding you more and more, and the more they do, the more extreme they get. And they're probably not monitored, they're newer, not monitored posts. Then the person starts connecting with them online, and all of a sudden they're offered a group that they want them to join, and they're there to help them. They tell you you can be a hero of the group. They have different symbols they often have, or their mottos, and a sense of belonging that I can serve a purpose.
Okay, so having these conversations early.
Yes.
Okay, you look at Evergreen, you look at Utah, you look back at Arapahoe and Columbine, and in these cases, all young white men. I wonder if you've seen patterns in your own client base that might give us some insight.
It pretty much, what I talked about, the profile of those kids, that fits it pretty well. In my own practice, I tend to see a lot of the kids who are been victimized or experiencing the trauma of shock that they went through, and really trying to just wrap their heads around why did that happen. I tend in my own practice have had to deal, fortunately, more with self-harm. It's been a lot of suicides in my career.
I'm sorry.
But you do see kids, and I'll work with some who, other kids will say, oh, that was horrible, that was repulsive, and I always have one or two who are like, that was so cool, and I hated that guy, and celebrating death.
And how do you encounter that as a therapist?
Very delicately. I try to, first I have to not get triggered myself. But, it's for parents when your kids are struggling with that. The first thing you do is validate what they're experiencing. And then as a therapist, I'm trying to help them work that into their therapeutic goals. And is that kind of process going to help you achieve your goals or not? And try to work with them through that perspective.
Jessica Armentrout of Littleton is a mom. She was in 8th grade during the Columbine attack in 1999, and she remembers feeling very much alone after that mass shooting.
My experience was I came home, my parents were at work, and we actually had to walk home that day because all the buses were transporting students. And we did not know if a shooter had been apprehended or not. So realizing as an adult now that that was a traumatic moment, my grown-ups weren't there. And I continued to watch the news and try to stay updated. And knowing that continuing media really impacted me has allowed me to change that experience for my children, that it's about being available in those moments.
And Armentrout tries to make sure she doesn't let her own fears affect her children too much.
Every day I drop my children off at school, I ensure no matter how the morning's gone, the last thing out of my mouth is, I love you and I hope you have a wonderful day. So I'm not communicating to them in any way a sense of fear, but I know it's a fear-based response because I would never want to have a situation where I questioned what was the last words I ever said to my child.
Before we go, square that deep desire not to make kids afraid with the fact that guns remain the leading cause of death for children and teens.
Yeah, that's just the most horrendous statistic. I think several things she said real quick. The sense that isolation and having been a first responder, mental health responder at Columbine, was critical for the kids and these children in Evergreen to connect with their peers, to feel safe and secure. And as terms of her children, you want them to feel safe at school. And statistically, school is the safest place for kids. They have far less accidents than they do other places.
And this idea that you don't want to scare a child, but you also want to be real with them in just a few seconds.
So you have to, and that's why they do school drills, which work effectively. We know that. Even though it's frightening for children, we have school drills. But you want to remind your children they are safe, and we're here for you, and we love you, and care about you.
And that school still, even though these stories make the news, school overall is still a safe place for them.
Yes, and that's where you have to help. The younger ones, it's hard to understand statistics, but it's helping them understand that even though it's incredibly horrible how it's escalated, it's still relatively small in terms of actual people being hurt.
Denver family therapist Craig Nippenberg. His latest book is Shame-Free Parenting, Building Resiliency in Times of Hardship, Guns, and Social Media.
Two students are hospitalized tonight, one in critical condition and another is improving, now listed as serious.
That's after a 16-year-old student opened fire at the high school on Wednesday. Your reporter in the Foothills, Alan Janae, was one of the first reporters on the scene that afternoon. And Alan, you've been learning more about the suspect based on his online footprint.
Yeah, we have, and it is troubling. There's no doubt about that. The Anti-Defamation League, in its Center on Extremism, has uncovered that the 16-year-old shooter spent substantial time online at sites featuring extremist ideologies and violent, gory content. And they believe he adopted extremist views himself. A handgun and bullets. This was an image, says the ADL, posted on an X or Twitter account belonging to the Evergreen High School shooter the morning of the attack. He would ride a bus to school, say investigators, and open fire. The ADL's research of his accounts show Desmond Holley developed a deep fascination with mass shooters, expressed neo-Nazi views, and frequented a site featuring violent, gory images. The Jeffco Sheriff's Office has pointed to troubling behavior.
It was stated to us specifically.
They say Desmond Holley
was radicalized through an extremist network.
Radicalization seems quite a common element, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The pattern that we're seeing, at least from what I can tell so far, is not anything new.
Beverly Kingston is director of CU's Center for the Study and Prevention of Violence. They've found school shooters often bear similarities or pay tribute to other mass shooters. On TikTok, Holly wore a mask with inscriptions including Al-Nur, the name of a mosque where there'd been a mass shooting, and 14, a possible reference to 14 words, a popular white supremacist slogan. In one online discussion, another poster wrote, "You got close to a full setup now, man. Time to make a move." Holly, who had collected tactical gear, says the ADL, liked it.
Getting rid of these websites is probably like playing a whack-a-mole game, though, right?
Yes. There's probably not going to be a technical fix to this.
Kingston says young people need to be pointed to pro-social rather than anti-social behavior, but support for those programs, already not good enough, is now declining.
That's an age when you're looking for identity, you're looking for meaning, you're looking for connection. I mean, we all know how much our friends matter at that age, and so that matters for every adolescent.
If there are signs of trouble, help can come too late.
And it's also way better if we can intervene at earlier stages. What we know, when people are radicalized to violence, it's much harder to intervene at those stages than it is at the earlier stages.
Kingston told me she did not think there had ever been a shooting they'd looked at that didn't have warning signs. But at last word, the sheriff's office said they have yet to find any red flags. The sheriff's office says the parents of the shooter are cooperating as to whether there could be any charges against family. Clearly, we are looking into everything, they told me today.
And will be interesting to figure out kind of what we learn more about this. And Alan, we know you'll stay on top of it for us.
You bet.
Thank you. We've also just learned that students and faculty will be able to pick up any items left inside the school. That will happen on Sunday.
Jefferson County Sheriff's Office says victim advocates and mental health professionals will be present and available during that difficult time.
Right now on our website, you can hear from a man who witnessed deputies confronting the teenage shooter. He spoke exclusively to your reporter, Gabriella Vidal.
It's stories that matter to you. Fox 6 News at 5 starts right now with breaking news.
And that breaking news is coming from Racine tonight. Police just arrested 2 students from Racine Christian School for making shooting threats.
Let's get right out to Bria Jones. And Bria, these students were just 12 years old.
That's right, Ted. That's what we learned from the Racine Police Department. They say 2 students were arrested after a school threat was made here at Racine Christian School. Take a look behind me. This is a look at the campus. As you can see right now, it is clear because classes were canceled today proactively due to this threat. According to the Racine Police Department, officers were alerted just after 7 a.m. about threats made by 2 12-year-old students, both a boy and a girl. Investigators say the children didn't have easy access to guns, but what they did find, they say, raised concerns, including a map of the school. Now, both students were taken to juvenile detention. Charges of making terroristic threats and disorderly conduct have been referred to the district attorney's office. Right now, police tell us that this case is still under investigation. They're asking anyone with any information to please give them a call. For now, reporting live in Racine, Bria Jones, Fox 6 News.
What a frightening alert. All right. Thank you, Bria Jones. And now to our big story at 5. Another police chase ends in death, and the people who died had nothing to do with the chase. Abril Preciado is live near 35th and Valete. This is in Milwaukee, where a vigil is happening right now. Abril.
Now, we have been out here throughout the day, and I can tell you that we have seen several people come on out, some of them crying, others staying silent, while leaning into one another, while looking at the pieces left from the car that the family was in. Now, police says 3 people died, and friends tell us that it was a mother and her 2 sons.
I didn't want to believe it.
This is what remains on the corner of 35th and Valete after a police chase turned deadly Tuesday night. Surveillance video captured the moment of impact that Milwaukee police say ended the lives of 3 people and seriously hurt 2 others in their car.
Out of all people, why gotta be the people I love?
The Milwaukee County Medical Examiner's Office identified the 3 people who died as 50-year-old Fleur Moo, 21-year-old Tom Moo May, and 15-year-old Carla Ko Moo.
We all family. We all grew up together.
Samuel, too, is one of the many close friends who is grieving.
I know they struggling and going through stuff. That's why I don't like it when things like that have to happen, because now it's only his dad and his little sister.
Police say they arrested a 19-year-old man who had injuries from the crash. They tell Fox 6 there were 2 others in the car trying to escape police that were also hurt.
So I'm a little upset this morning, and I know it's not just me.
Mayor Cavalier Johnson blamed reckless driving and said he believes history shows pulling back on police chases isn't the answer.
When you look at reckless driving in Milwaukee, right, and where we are versus where we were, right, when the police pulled back on their pursuit policy in the city of Milwaukee, that's what caused an explosion of reckless driving in the first place.
For now, people like to grieve their loved ones and hope for change. And now, family of the friends tell us that they will be gathering here later on tonight for a vigil, all to show support to the family and also continue to grieve the loss of their loved ones. Reporting live in Milwaukee, Abril Preciado, Fox 6 News.
April, thank you so much. Tonight.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear who are not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years. Say that again. Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
As investigators continue to seek answers about what drove the young man accused of killing conservative activist Charlie Kirk, conspiracies about who he is and what he believed are flourishing. William Brangham takes a closer look at what we know about the suspect's life online.
One focal point for investigators are the inscriptions carved onto the bullet casings that were believed to be owned by the alleged shooter. They contain a number of seemingly sarcastic, irreverent phrases that are common in gaming and online communities. Phrases like Bella Ciao and Hey Fascist Catch, and a series of arrows, up, right, and several pointing down. So to help us decipher what those inscriptions might mean, we turn to Ryan Broderick. He's the author of the newsletter called Garbage Day and host of the podcast Panic World. Ryan Broderick, thank you so much for being here. We heard earlier today the latest on the investigation into this alleged shooter, but I want to ask you about those bullet casings. They clearly imply that the suspect lived a very, very online, internet-focused life, heavily steeped in gaming and these subcultures. From your expertise, what can we glean by what was written on those bullet casings?
Well, the bullet that struck and killed Charlie Kirk allegedly had a phrase of a very common meme written on it. It is part of a subculture called furries. They are people who dress up in animal costumes, and this screenshot has been traveling around the internet forever. It doesn't mean that Robinson is a member of that subculture, but he is of an age where he would have grown up online seeing it everywhere. It's a bit of what they would call cringe humor. The other bullets recovered by law enforcement include a reference to the satirically fascist video game Helldivers 2. You basically play as fascists in space. And the message, Hey Fascist Catch, with the arrows written on it, references the most powerful bomb attack in the game. So the idea is you play those buttons, you throw the bomb, it's a massive explosion. The other bullet referenced by law enforcement is the Italian folk song Bella Ciao. It is common among anti-fascist and leftist communities, but it's also a popular fixture in pop culture. It was used in Netflix's show Money Heist. It's referenced in the video game Far Cry 6. And then the last one, which reads, You're gay, LMAO, is what you would just call boilerplate troll behavior. It's meant to embarrass any sort of law enforcement investigator looking at the bullets. You know, how dare you try to find meaning in what I've written on these bullets, which is something that we've seen with a lot of other young Gen Z extremists over the last year or two.
So should we take these comments literally? Are they meant to be tongue-in-cheek, jokey? Are they some combination? I mean, it sounds like it's very hard to glean an ideology here.
That is the main question. So it is possible that Robinson is a leftist, an anti-fascist, someone you would consider on the political left. It's equally possible that he is trying to muddy the waters. We've seen this with other spree shooters at schools across the country this year, where a shooter will write conflicting political messages. In Nashville, Minneapolis, we've seen this. Dating all the way back to 2019 with the use of memes in the Christchurch shooting in New Zealand. This is a common tactic for what you would call an accelerationist. For those who aren't familiar, an accelerationist is someone who wants to accelerate the end of the status quo, end of society, someone who wants to push politics and political violence to such an extreme that, you know, the order of the country would fall apart. It is a very nihilistic, very apocalyptic view that has become more and more popular, particularly on the dark corners of the internet in the last 10 years.
So when Utah's Republican governor, Spencer Cox, says that this is evidence of leftist ideology, you seem to believe that's not nearly as clear-cut with what we know now.
I don't think so, but we have seen these tactics used on the far right more commonly. They know the playbook after an incident like this. So with law enforcement digging through manifestos, looking for evidence of a larger ideology, this is a pattern we see after every incident like this, and young extremists know this.
So clearly, as you're saying, this person lived a very, very steeped in the online world life. How has Charlie Kirk's murder been viewed online, broadly speaking?
Well, you have to imagine this is going exactly according to plan. Charlie Kirk's death was telegraphed for social media. It took place at a public event where Kirk was surrounded by smartphones. The shooter would have known that there would be an audience. Charlie Kirk is an extremely popular influencer on the right and a very well-known figure of derision on the left. He was a very polarizing figure, right? And so the minute that footage of his death hit social media, it went more viral than I think anything we've ever seen like this. And now the wild goose chase that internet users are going on to figure out why Robinson allegedly carried out the attack fits perfectly in with previous shootings like this. If you wanted to cause as much chaos online, this is exactly how you would do it. And we've seen this with internet users digging through Tyler Robinson's mother's Facebook history, looking for any sort of meaning in the memes written on the bullets themselves. And then the general chaos of the modern social media age. So we've seen conspiracy theories. We've seen AI play a prominent role in misinformation. It is complete chaos. And that is only exacerbated by the way that the Trump administration and the FBI have been handling this in the public, putting out as much info as they can, even though it's conflicting, sending people off in different directions about what may have happened. It is an information nightmare.
Amidst all this, we're seeing so much of an attempt to pin the blame on left-wing ideology or right-wing ideology. Is that the right way to think about or talk about these online subcultures?
I don't believe so. I think the thing to really focus on here is that Tyler Robinson is of a generation that has grown up in America where there have always been school shootings, always been spree shootings. And many young people, many young extremists that we've seen come out of the woodwork over the last few years since the pandemic see public violence as a path towards fame, towards glory, another way to go viral. And they talk about this on platforms like Discord and websites like 4chan. This is common knowledge for young people. And so, of course, there is the knee-jerk reaction to blame this on anti-fascists or leftists or trans communities or right-wing commentators. But this is a larger problem, a much more politically complex problem. And it's one that is very ingrained in American society in the 21st century at this point.
All right. That is writer and podcaster Ryan Broderick. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
College welcomed home two of its most accomplished alumni today. They spoke at the 2025 Provost Convocation, and they didn't shy away from talking about threats to HBCUs and the political climate. Bethel Miles has the story.
When the head of the NAACP returns to his alma mater, the message goes well beyond the classroom.
I just think that HBCUs are always so impactful that we always get kind of like the backlash for everything that's going on.
Tougaloo College students saw the string of threats made to HBCUs nationwide. And those who go there, like Ariel Brumfield, are paying attention.
A lot of things that's been happening recently in America has nothing to do with this. But I think that the fact that HBCUs are still being targeted and still are being brought to the forefront of these issues just goes to show how impactful we are.
That's why the presence of NAACP President and CEO Derek Johnson on campus carries so much weight. A Tougaloo alum himself, he spent decades fighting for equality. We asked him about the attacks on HBCUs and the political climate young people are facing today.
45, so we've been around. We've seen different iterations of what we're witnessing now. Not the same, but very different.
Johnson says students deserve safety and security as they pursue education, not to live under the shadow of violence or intimidation.
It is an unfortunate climate that we're in. We should be protecting our young people, ensuring that they are provided a quality education, become critical thinkers in this emerging global economy.
Johnson and his wife, attorney Letitia Johnson, who is running for Mississippi Senate District 26, returned to Tougaloo to speak at this year's Provost Convocational. Both encouraged students to see leadership not just as a title, but as a journey.
What I want to do is inspire people to understand that we still hold the solutions to the problems that are at hand.
For many here, those words hit home, especially in light of the recent threats. Students say moments like these prove why HBCUs matter.
Personally, it makes me feel like I could be in his shoes, or it makes me feel like I am in his shoes. So it was very good to be able to have that conversation with him, not as somebody that's over us, but somebody that's standing with us.
And Johnson says that impact is exactly why the NAACP will always stand with them.
So we have black members, we have white members, we have people who care about democracy, because our job is to make democracy work for all.
That was 16 WABT's Bethel Miles reporting for us tonight. Now, this Provost Convocation is held every fall. Tougaloo leaders say the dialogue will continue well beyond today's event.
The man knot, race, class, genre, and the dilemmas of black manhood.
Family in Mississippi is now begging for answers after their 21-year-old was found dead hanging from a tree at Delta State University. Campus police say the body of 21-year-old Trey Reed, a black student, was discovered by staff members on Monday morning. Authorities quickly ruling out foul play, and during a press conference today, the university president insisting that race relations are not an issue at the university.
I can say that my heartbreak is comprehensive, not just for Trey, although it is primarily for Trey, but for the fact that the rest of the world has an impression of Delta State that is so at odds with what I know to be this institution. This institution should not be associated with hate or hate crimes.
Civil rights attorney Ben Crump, now representing Reed's family, demanding more transparency. The family saying we cannot accept vague conclusions when so many questions remain. Let's bring in our Ike Ajachi. So, Ike, what are we learning from police today, and are they still continuing to rule out foul play?
Yeah, Kira, several different agencies surrounding this investigation are saying just that. The Delta State University police chief, he's come out and said that there is no indication of foul play surrounding this incident. He also said that there is no ongoing threat to staff or faculty. Now, if you also look at what the Bolivar County Coroner's Office is saying, it's also falling in line with that. They're saying through a preliminary examination that there are no injuries to 21-year-old Trey Reed's body that are consistent to a physical attack. So that they said that there are no lacerations, no bruises, no broken bones, anything that would look like there was a physical attack to his body. Now, the coroner's office is saying that they are investigating this as a suicide, and they're also saying that the full autopsy is currently being done by the Mississippi State Crime Lab, and that'll be finished in about 24 to 48 hours, Kira.
So what is the family saying? Are they thinking it's a suicide?
Well, Kira, the family of Trey Reed right now, they are expressing deep frustration, and they are demanding transparency surrounding this investigation. Right now, through their attorney, Vanessa Jones, they have announced that they are conducting their own independent autopsy, and they're even conducting their own investigation around this. They are demanding answers, they're saying, that are shrouded in some kind of a cloud of secrecy. This is according to the attorney and the family. So what we're seeing right now is that they're claiming that there has been a lack of direct communication from law enforcement, from the university to the family on the day this incident was discovered, that is, of course, on September 15th, just 2 days ago. They're saying there has been no communication, and that's exactly what they're demanding. Take a listen.
Family does not know exactly what happened on September the 15th of 2025. We are seeking answers. The family of Trey Reed has not even received a phone call from the president of Delta State University.
He told me that they found Trey Reed in his room. And he didn't say possible suicide, he said suicide.
Now, Kira, it is important to note that the university did respond, the university president that is, by saying that the university contacted an individual for Trey Reed who is listed as the next of kin. And they said that happened on that day, Kira.
Demartravion Trey Reed, 21 years old. Demartravion Trey Reed, privileged black male. Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy, information for non-white people, victims of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, September 20, 2025. So I have been told. Our weekly broadcast, the Compensatory Call-In. Dial in, not for spectators, dial in if you have observations, thoughts, counter-racist suggestions, particularly if we have attempted black parents. This weekend, it's the beginning of the school year and beginning of autumn, really. Yeah, new academic year, new season, all of that. But for this broadcast, parents, do we have attempted parents listening in, requesting that they specifically not be spectators this here evening? Pick up their phone, get on your device microphone. The number is 720-716-7300. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate, especially for non-white parents. Just, man, it's so much happening. Always is the case, but brand new school year, and with all of these events happening in the schools, further illustration of why there have to be lots of very serious conversations well in advance of getting to the bedroom. Many, many, many conversations. And then, okay, we might do this child thing. Whew, that is also lots to discuss. I mean, lots. Getting them books in advance. What are we gonna? We can practice. We'll have lots of time before that child even gets here to practice. How are we going to explain white supremacy racism to them? And then the diet and breastfeeding and homeschooling and all that stuff, we get all that together in advance. So we won't be sitting there stumbling and fumbling and I wish we had talked about this, wish we had turned the TV off, full of what, man, Netflix so addictive and we just putting it all procrastinating. Attempted parents. What are you chatting about with your offspring, or what are they, asking you about, or a little of both maybe? We shall see. Listener-supported counter-racist radio. Invest. If you think the cows is constructive, hit the blog racism-notes.blogspot.com. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button is in the top right corner. Beneath the button, you'll see the links for Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal. Enormous gratitude to all of the investors who kept us on the air for 16 years, good or bad. Hopefully we've been worthy of your time and energy. You'll also see the link for the Amazon wish list. It is listed under Gus T. Renegade. Huge thanks to all of our supporters who nabbed an item or a dozen over these 16 years of broadcasting. Again, hopefully we have been worthy of your currency, accurate more often than not. I guess number one, or I'll get to it in stride. Get to it in stride. One good thing I can say about this here week, curmudgeon, right? Said that the whole time through. Worthless Negro from Virginia. Try to avoid victims of racism, classified as black or otherwise. But I went out briefly, get my little groceries, and there's non-white victim of racism who is there. We do talk about racism from time to time. Actually, several of the employees at my favorite grocery store are classified as not white, and we do discuss racism. Like, wow, that would be favorite grocery store forever, right? Anyway, anybody here, you have people, non-white people at your grocery store where you all talk about racism with the people who work there? Anyway, but I went in not to talk about racism, to get my vittles and exit quickly. But I'm there, non-white person one. She is the one who told me about Demartravion, Trey Reed, and him being found hanging. So that was one. I said, oh my goodness, wow, I hadn't heard about this at all. And it had just had, like, she heard about it the day it happened. It seemed like as soon as the news reports came out that this happened, because I think it was on Monday, and they said it happened on Monday. So, I mean, she was on it. So that was one. And then got to share a book, and she was even excited. Non-fiction book about racism with that phone. As a matter of fact, double dipped. I got two because we were talking about the school system, and she said they're closing the Negro schools in Seattle. I said, what? She said she did this before, about 15 years previously, around 2010. She said that they were closing schools, Negro schools specifically in Seattle, and she said it's happening again. They got a list and everything, but interestingly, within all this, she said they don't have enough students. Now, for sure, some of this, she said, is COVID-19, and a lot of parents took their children out of school after COVID-19 and just will do homeschooling or online schooling or whatever, but we're not going back to the classroom. I heard quite a bit of that, right? So that is part of what's happening, but also part of what this is, I think, is white genetic annihilation. Just people not having enough children. That's what I think, particularly white people not having babies. They got promote all that LGBTQ and anti-sex. This is the result. You can do all that talk adoption and blah, 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 and all that. We'll steal children from overseas, although they're cutting off some of that too in some areas. But hey, not producing children, full of called it anti-sex for a reason. This is part of the result, I think. So she brought that. I was like, wow, I had to do some research on that. Remember, because she was saying parents are trying to go out and march and protest and keep the schools open and generally failing. That's not a criticism. I mean, hey, I would be failing too. And I've said the whole time, I've failed for 16 years. The goal is replace white supremacy with justice. Gus T gets an F. So, I mean, that's, victims of racism not succeeding in trying to do something constructive is very common, and white people are to blame. But they were trying to keep these schools open in Seattle, and white people were making it difficult, all the rest of it. And within that, I said, oh man, Azor Savage, guest on the program, wrote that whole book on the racism she experienced in school, even though Cal Bell, Azor has a white parent. And I said I was able to go see her in person because she did a talk about her book. And then we had her as a guest on the cows right before COVID sat in, like literally weeks before COVID sat in. She said, oh, man, the young lady I was speaking to, she said, man, I got to go get that book, look that up, and then dropped another one as well. So always whoopee for constructive conversation, and particularly constructive about things that are serious, not fool talk. And did you see Kevin Hart's new special and Cat Williams roasted? Boy, come on. Let's see. Specific content for this week. Non-white parents, going back to last week, because they've been talking about those threats, racist threats targeting HBCUs. They've been talking about them since last week. And so we have at least one attempted mommy, maybe many, who have offspring who are currently enrolled in an HBCU. And she was talking to me about, her offspring was so pleased about being there, which I've heard from a number of parents. They're really glad they made that decision. It's been a great environment for them. Right on. And I said, you'd still have to talk about racism. Just because you're there doesn't mean you have escaped racism, which we learned this week. And so I asked, oh, man, did you talk to them about, the threats that they've been talking about at campus and blah, 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 and all this? She said, oh, yeah, we talked about all that, checked in on them. She said, in fact, the school checked in with the parents, sent out, I guess, emails and texts and all of that to let them know such and such happened. We had these threats. This is what we're doing. We canceled class for the day, or made it online, or, whatever. But we are taking it seriously. So they were kept informed about what was happening, and then able to talk to their offspring as well. So I thought that was great. But that's why you want to speak to your offspring often about white supremacy, racism, and honestly, so that they're not thinking, hey, this is the whole reason that I went to an HBCU. Hey, there is nowhere to run. And in fact, the HBCU that you are attending probably named after a white person, and probably being robbed mercilessly by white people. In fact, anybody, if you attend an HBCU, you should do some digging while you're there. How much money has this school been robbed of? Current. You can go back long term as well, but how much money do white people steal from this school? Because NPR has done massive reports about this, and repeatedly. So you're right there at one of the institutions. Somebody there should be studying, looking at this. How much money have they cheated us out of? How does this process happen? How long has this been going on? All of that. I would love to see that data. That should be a part of the HBCU experience, because, there is nowhere to run. There's so many components of white supremacy, racism, and that's economics too, right? Let's see. But kudos. Attempted black mommy talking to her offspring and having them prepped for the threats at the HBCU this past week. Probably ongoing. Let's see. The case with James B. Gosnell in South Carolina. That's the judge who sentenced Dylan Roof. I believe he said that Dylan Roof's family, they were victims in all this too. What? Anyway, but he's the one suspected race soldier, Judge Gosnell. They said he had pornographic child content showing child sexual abuse and what have you. Man, I told you they had that case before where the judge, he had some sort of sexual device, sex toy that he was using during court cases on the bench, apparently. And they found out about this, and, he eventually got in trouble and all that. But I mean, man. Well, and then they have the audacity, Your Honor. Ain't nothing honorable in the system of white supremacy, racism. That is the grandest farce in the universe. Democracy. Come on. Let's see. And even because that case was connected to Dylan Roof, we're reading about South Carolina heroes right now. I believe FBI Director Kash Patel this week they were asking him about so-called extremism and racism, and he did not remember the Dylann Roof white terrorism of Charleston, South Carolina, just a decade past. He had forgotten about this. Like, Dylan what? Dylan who? Dylan. Oh, you mean Dill out in Eric and Dill? That's you. Oh, that's not who you talking about. That's not you. Don't. That's you talking about something else. Let's see. Dylann Roof. That ain't. I don't remember that one. Did you play football? You had a little bit of brain damage before you got to the FBI, Cash Patel? Like, wow. Let's see. The segment about President Trump labeling Antifa, in quotes, a terrorist organization. Wow. And Antifa is so vague, which came across to me in the report. They end up saying that Gus T is Antifa. I ain't never called myself no Antifa. I don't even know what it is, but there, Gus T right there, Antifa. Black eyed, and if you're Negro identity extremist, you automatically Antifa. Black Lives Matter, that's automatically Antifa. That's what I mean. Like, what? Antifa? What? Let's see. The religion of white supremacy in Boston. So they got the statue to recognize, I think they said, what was it, approximately 250 Negroes that were owned at the Church King's Chapel Church. It's approximately about 250 Negroes they own, so we want to put a statue down and be truthful about, hey, we own Negroes here in New England too. It was not just a Florida and Southern thing. We'll put a statue here. Are you serious? I would much rather them put up a statue. And they got pictures of Negro woman, slave, I guess, and I know why the caged bird sings type thing. Maya Angelou would be so proud. I would much rather have a picture of Charles Stewart and his pregnant wife, a statue rather of them, and or a statue of the police breaking into some Negro's house on account of Charles Stewart. I would much rather some sort of artistic rendition or a statue of that as opposed to whatever this is supposed to be, caged bird and a Negro slave from 250 years ago. Like, come on. White people got tons of books, documentary films, all kinds of material about, oh man, we own Negroes all over the continent. My goodness, from Texas, California, Massachusetts. I mean, we just own Negroes and own Negroes and own Negroes. Wonderful. And then terrorize the Negroes we got right now too. No more statues, man. No more statues. And then to put all that up, to have President Trump come around next week or next year and say, you know what? That violates the take that down. I like the caged bird. Well, pack it up. Replace white supremacy with justice. We don't need no more statues, even cute ones. Let's see. The segment on the, in fact, they went around, and that was the very next segment. They were talking about President Trump. We got to purge the national parks and monuments because you come around and make commentary disparaging the great U.S. of A., saying white peoples are racist, all that. He said was from NPR. So they got Frank Langford. I suspect this is a white dude, but this is audio, so I don't know. They said, well, over the summer, the Park Service provided these QR codes for visitors to comment on any signs that they thought needed to be changed. And again, now they've had a lot of reports about, in terms of national parks and federal parks and the great outdoors, white people have often made it difficult for black people to access these types of sites, so I suspect it might be skewed in terms of the people who are using these QR codes to make their gripes about what's wrong at the parks. And I was leaked, it was leaked about 2,200 of these, I guess, reports or what have you, and I read through them, and there's one visitor who flagged a sign on territorial expansion. It said Native Americans were, quote, starved into submission to the white man's will. And the visitor found that that was, pretty stark and reductive. But critics like that were really rare. Only a tiny percentage of people actually used these codes to criticize the signs. So I guess the person, if I'm reading it correctly, the sign said Native Americans were starved into submission to the white man's will. The visitor found that that was stark and reductive. Is it true? See, that would be my one recommendation. Conversations on racism, really anything. When people come out and start talking about anything, Gus T, they don't like what Gus T said and all this other nonsense, anything. Is this true? And I mean, really, the word that caught me, number one book, Gus T, got on the book list and all. Starved. Is this true? Were they made to submit? Is that what we got a record of? Non-white people, so-called Native Americans, them submitting to white people? Is there a record of this? Yes or no? Trail of Tears, I thought they called it. Were they eating filet mignon on the Trail of Tears? They were eating what they call it, high on the hog? Come on, man. Is it true? Yes or no? That's what we want. We want inaccuracies. That's what we would like. Signs said that they had 2 million Negroes owned in New England. Oh, that's not true. We said we only had 250. We got an error. That needs to be corrected on the sign. Thank you. We'll get right to it. But starved? Oh, yeah, we starved Negroes. You ain't read Delectable Negro? We'll put that up in the national park, too. Maybe we'll do a statue of Delectable Negro. Some of the torture instruments that they used, maybe at King's Chapel. But is it true? I don't even know what that means. That's stark. Reductive. What does that mean? Well, see, it's a plaque. We can't talk for it. That's why we have books like Delectable Negro. We can go into great detail. This here is just a plaque, so it's got to be reductive to a degree. We just got to get to the core truthful elements that are trying to be conveyed. And it sounds like the core truthful elements were starvation, defeat by the white man. Isn't that true? Those would be main priorities for lots of non-white people. Starving, defeat by the white man, white woman, white child. Reductionist. Come on. And they'll do things like that too. Like, yeah, it is reductionist. Yeah, like, well, is this true? If it's true, then what's the problem? You like us to add more to it. Well, we don't have space to add anything else to it. Let's see. The section, the section about the wind project in Rhode Island, probably. Oh, that New England, slave town. That section, important for so many reasons, gee willikers. And I used the section, Old Thomas in New York. I used that deliberately, and that is from 5 years ago, way back, ancient times. They had the, it was just before they had the energy, or not energy, but the snowstorm down in Texas, and they had lost power for a while. It's really bad. And things might not even be corrected, but they had lots of conferences and meetings and investigations about why all that happened, emergency situation, but Thomas in New York, victim, dialed in and was talking about the blame for all of that being on these green energy programs. And I want to highlight that is not edited other than me adding Kendrick Lamar instrumental, but that is not edited. I didn't use no AI fakery. You can go back in the archive and hear it'll be exactly that minus the K dot. Exactly what he said in that audio segment, and I played the full bit. That's why it's about 2 minutes. Didn't cut nothing out, so you can see unvarnished. This is what he said. That right there is one of the reasons why I say, I hate talking to victims of racism, because there is such a, I'm phrasing it, such a disdain for people classified as black in particular. We will come and say anything to people classified as black, and I mean anything. I'm not an expert. I haven't researched this at all, but I will come and talk to you like I am a tenured Harvard professor in this subject matter that I've been studying for the last 50 years. And that is not the case at all. I've seen that where if I was talking to somebody white, I would not be saying all this. Even if I was talking to somebody who was not classified as black, I would not be saying all this and coming and talking to you like I'm an expert. This is Thomas in New York, not Thomas in Texas. And you don't even work in an energy company. How did you come to conclude all of this? I do think it's important for context. White people were saying this at that time. Saying what? What you heard him say, the exact talking point he had in that audio segment, that, oh man, it's these so-called green energy programs that are responsible for why they don't have power down in Texas, why you got all these shivering cold folks in the snow and inclement weather. And like I said, they had investigations because this was like a big deal. I think people died behind all that. That was not true at all. And a lot of this goes back to same thing. Even some of what you heard today in Rhode Island, the same thing. White people, unregulated, do whatever we want to. We don't have to follow any rules. That was the problem down in Texas. Not know it's green energy. They relied on solar and wind, and that's not what it was at all. And like I said, I am so repulsed. Don't come talking to me like you. And I said this then. I said this back then. I said this immediately. I said it double. I said it immediately live time when he first said all of that. I had heard white people. It had got so bad. White people had been saying that, and they responded on a myriad of media outlets saying that is not true. President Trump and his ilk specifically had been saying that. That is not true. Stop saying that. That is not why that happened. I said something about it immediately live time, and then I started playing that back. Stand by what you said at minimum. I started playing that back. Hey, now we got 5 years to sit back and look at that, because it was predicted that this was going to be a widespread problem. Green energy projects causing further electrical and energy disruptions. Is that what we've experienced 5 years on? Exactly. The same people who were propagating that lie and talking point, the same people now, we get 80% into a wind energy project. We're done with that. We're done with that. And the white sacrifice, I just told you, they don't have no whole lot of niggers in Rhode Island. Whole state, racially restricted region. So all that who lost out on jobs, we almost got this project done, and the people who go out there on the boats to get it up, and people who feed them, almost sounding like slavery in Rhode Island some centuries back, but whatever. That's probably like 95% people classified as white. Rhode Island is a really tiny state, but even still, that's probably about 95% white people, I would wager, safely, confidently. All white sacrifice. Tough titty funding is cut. Now, as that wind energy project messed us up, now we're going to have problems this winter, heading into the cold months. We're going to run out of the heat. It's going to be 0 degrees in December. No. Ain't even going to have no wind to depend on. You know that going into it. That's what, and I've seen the same thing. They weren't just talking about Rhode Island, same patterns. 5 years on. Be informed. That's one thing, and I think Fuller endorsed the same thing, particularly for white people, but I would say with anybody. I do not come on this broadcast just talk willy-nilly about any old thing, even if I heard somebody white say something. I do not just pick up what they say and repeat it. That's not what we need. We need accurate, logical information for non-white people. And in fact, even that word logical, when they asked, why are they doing this? Why are they abandoning these wind projects, energy projects that might save a little coal and all the rest of it, help this warming planet? Why are they doing it? And even messing up some white people who work on these jobs. Why are they doing this? It's not logical. Gus T, that is a major highlight, because the big problem on the planet, capital P, system of white supremacy racism, is not logical. It is not logical to mistreat 90% of the population on the planet. Any way you slice it, even white genetic annihilation, that doesn't make sense. So, I personally, in my brain computer now, when you start to run into things where it's just, this doesn't make logical sense. Why is this being done? This isn't even logical. Like, this could be racism at work. The system of white supremacy is so massively, does such a massive job of unbalancing everything on the planet, all areas of people activity, all forms of life, that, man, that illogic, sick logic, you encounter it all the time. So I highlight now, when you start having things, particularly problems are being caused and we can't even get a logical reason as to why this is happening. Oh yeah, that's probably white supremacy racism. And I'm acknowledging you got some white sacrifice here, because it sounds like some white people lost jobs and such. Might even be some white people lost cheap access to energy. Oh well. One, Dr. Kamal Kamban, late great, he called them cesspoolians. Pollute the whole planet. Forget about carbon footprint. I'm going to go burn some coal right now. And in fact, get ready for Christmas. Brag. I'm put coal in everybody's stocking and charge you for it too. But cesspoolians all the way through. So yeah, we will totally abet. We'll lie to you and pretend we're going to do the wind and solar project and then get 90% complete or 80% complete. And it's side, trick you, nap, and leave the pylons rotting in the ocean. Yep. That's what we do. Racist man, build up to tear down. That's what we do. O.J. Simpson, the wind tower, that's what we do. And then Gus T's minor moment of brilliance, I deliberately sequenced. I played that first, and then we hear New Orleans, it's warming. Electricity costs, warming. Now, if you had well-functioning wind, solar alternatives, hey, maybe we wouldn't have all these explosive energy bills on a warming planet. That's not what white people want. And in fact, you heard they said President Trump, he was irked with all this. It wasn't a logical reason. They said it was some sort of wind turbine project. It was disrupting my golf game in Scotland. I'm done with it. I'm done. Yeah. Done with the wind projects. I got white man got to get out here and do it. Got Dr. Wells and got a whole section in the ISIS papers about racism, white supremacy, and golf. Niggers in New Orleans, we could appreciate more energy efficient alternatives so we can have better access to AC, since that's going to be mandatory on a warming climate. Nah. They got lots of it. They even said there, no trees since Hurricane Katrina, no trees. It's going to be even hotter. Said it's 4 degrees warmer over the last 20 years, and because they don't have no trees, especially where the niggers live, that's like everywhere, especially where the niggers live, we don't have no trees, it's 8 degrees warmer. Sometimes even worse. All that concrete, I use that as a sound clip all the time. That's from Hurricane Katrina. Lots of black people talking about how hot it was. You could about die just from that. Not talking about die from LeRoy and the Negro looters. You could die from the heat. That's 20 years ago, so it would have been at least 4 degrees warmer if Katrina happened now. That's easily, you could add to the death count. They don't even have an accurate toll for how many people died then. You for sure could add to it. You take that temperature up almost 5 degrees from what everyone said almost in unison was Africa hell heat. You might have 3% more deaths, especially for a lot of people who were not healthy to begin with and then dehydrated on top of that. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's any of that illogic things that would seem to be beneficial on a planet that is warming, and you don't want to do it. You just want to continue with more coal, and we don't want to do solar. We don't want to do wind. We just want to continue with the same old polluting, wasting energy, wasting materials. Cesspoolians practicing white supremacy racism. And I would even say there's a planet of the apes element to all of this. If white genetic annihilation is for real, and if we can't dominate this planet and even feel like we might be departing because we're not producing enough children and all of that, hey, we'll blow the whole thing up. Even at a slow rate, we'll blow the whole thing up. If we're not going to be here, then y'all not going to be here and enjoy something. We'll just leave acid and uranium and try and pollute radiation, pollute the water, the air. Hey, we won't be here and you'll still be Eric Garner. I can't breathe because we have polluted this entire universe. That'll be the goal, maybe. Cesspoolians at minimum, Dr. Kanban told us. And in fact, if I could get to the resentment that I have for black people coming, and everybody does this, white people, non-white people, other black people, because this is what's modeled. You just come, there's so little regard for black people and everybody thinks we're dumb and stupid. Just come tell them anything. We talked about cannabis consumption before. Did folks see the report in the newspaper? Folks didn't send me this one. Again, people will send me, the nonsense that they watch on Netflix and Hulu, Amazon, addicted to screens. I've said for years, I don't care what black people watch. Do not come to talk to me about entertainment ever for any reason. Whoopee for Terrence Crawford too. Brain damage. However, they had a report, New York Times, just this week. Pregnant women should not use cannabis, new medical guidelines say. I shared it on social media 2 times, trying to use social media constructively. This is from September 19, yesterday. Women who are pregnant, planning a pregnancy, or breastfeeding should be screened for cannabis use and strongly discouraged from it, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists said in a new clinical guidelines published on Friday. Isn't that J. Marion Sims? Father of gynecology. That's J. Marion Sims. Yeah. That's J. Marion Sims. Yeah. Medical apartheid. Yeah. Cannabis use during pregnancy has been rising for years. Many women rely on the drug to cope with nausea and other pregnancy symptoms. But the college warned that mounting evidence linked cannabis to preterm births, low birth weights, and a greater need for neonatal intensive care, as well as neurocognitive and behavioral problems in children. Patients are often using cannabis to help with some kind of medical ailment, not recreationally. In their mind, they think it's a more natural way to deal with a medical problem, said Dr. Melissa Russo, an author of the new guidance. But there are lots of natural things that are not safe, Dr. Russo said. There are no studies demonstrating that cannabis is effective for pregnant or lactating women, she added, and research now shows there are potential adverse effects. The college warned against blood or urine tests for cannabis screening. Instead, it urged physicians to talk with women about their habits and to encourage them to stop using marijuana as soon as possible while offering alternative therapies for medical ailments. The screening should be universal in an effort to avoid bias and racism. Wow. The college said it's noted that pregnant Black and Hispanic women, Hispanic is not a racial classification again, are 4 to 5 times as likely as white women to be tested for drug use. Black women are almost 5 times as likely to be reported to Child Protective Services for suspected drug use. Devontae, just talked about him. Can't stop talking about Devontae. We talk about him every year. Should paint Jim Jones and really that's the same case. Jim Jones and Devontae, and I can have him with the red Kool-Aid cup. Same thing. Throwaway children. Jesus, that right there. The throwing away of Black children starts right there. Puff, puff, pass. The throwing away of Black children starts right there. Get your brain or protecting the brain computer of children. And even I am very proud to say this should not be like news for COWS listeners. We've been talking about cannabis for many years. Even that's another one I brought up in the same context because we had Black people who talked about, hey, I used cannabis as a child while my brain computer was still developing, and I turned out great. If you're still a victim of white supremacy, you, we are not great. Anyway, but we talked about pregnant females, mommies, breastfeeding should not be consuming cannabis. Had White Doctor Medical on the program in 2023, and she said, in fact, she said, Gus T, there's been data on this for some time. Like, this is not a new thing. And even exactly what they said, having low weight pregnancies as a result, or it seems like there could be some sort of correlation with the cannabis use. So, hey, you are what your grandparents ate. Judith Finlayson said you should get away from the Big Macs before you get pregnant, and that's for the dudes and the females. If that's the case for Big Macs, why wouldn't that be the case for cannabis? Cigarettes. But that was in the New York Times this week. If you are going to, or even thinking about pregnancy, breastfeeding, no ganja. Shouldn't be around it. And in fact, that would mean the dude too, because you can't be around it. And then no ganja. Let's see. They were talking about the shootings in Colorado in the exact same county as Columbine, Jefferson County. That was, wow, what an extraordinary series of readings on the Catherine Massey Book Club, because we read about Sue Klebold as well. But wow, changed the trajectory of the COWS broadcast, reading about Columbine, to now rethink all of these school shooting examples. But they, in that segment that was on Colorado Public Radio, they talked to the author of Shame-Free Parenting, Building Resiliency in Times of Hardship, Guns, and Social Media. The author is Craig Nippenberg. I think that's a white man, I think. But stunningly, they asked old Craig, they said, Craig, Sandy Hook, Columbine, Evergreen, Marjorie Stoneman, and they just go on and on and on and on. Parkland, you know. Is it profile seems to be somebody white, affluent school maybe, and they go and do all this. He said, yep, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. That is about what it is. And I thought it was stunning that old Craig, that was the point where he was talking about, all the that it was white people, that this is the profile for what the people that go out and do these shootings, and they included that he rode the bus to school and all the rest of it. They didn't include that he had these neo-Nazi views, Craig and them. They just talked about how they will leave some sort of trail, which we talked about before. They'll leave some sort of evidence that they're going to carry out these acts, and that they're looking for some sort of acceptance from others. And I said, oh, no. Even the acceptance and all that, because you have LeRoy and Jamal, Devontae, they're at school, in foster care sometimes. They're looking for acceptance. They have a difficult time fitting in, remedial classes, getting suspended, and all the rest of it. They don't go shoot the school up. It's just students classified as white. Even the transgender white students getting in on the act now. Said, no. Why are the white children doing this? The white children explicitly. And even when they started talking about the fame, they said, you get the fame, the glory. Go out and do these shootings. I said, no, Craig, that is all the way back to Columbine. That's why I said it changed the trajectory of our broadcasting to even know that. Nah, man. The other Dill, not Dylan Roof. Eric Harris, Dylan Klebold, Spawn of Sioux, they did the same thing. They sat there and bragged. Said old Tim McVeigh ain't got nothing on us, man. They're going to talk about us with Jeff Dahmer, man. We going to go out here. That dude, he killed 200 people. Man, we about to kill 500 folks, boy. They're going to make movies about that natural born killer. That's what they said 30 years ago, man. 30 years ago. This is not no new phenomenon. What ain't changed? White people, and white people bragging. Fuller wrote about that exactly. That is the entire motivation, not for these school shootings. That's the entire motivation for the system of white supremacy. I'm going to go out here and kill dark people like Michael Scholes for fun. Glory. And in fact, they said the whole go and tear down society, that's the Turner Diaries. Go blow up the federal building. Tim McVeigh, go blow up the federal building. And the Turner Diaries is youth reading, like The Hate You Give. But that's long white culture. 30 years for sure with the school shootings, but I mean, you really get at the core of what it means to be white. They'll talk about me forever. Let me go out here and kill 15,000 people. Let me go out here and kill 50 people. They'll talk about me forever, make movies about me. Who do you think they'll get to play me in the movie? What you think? That's Mary Kay Letourneau, Susan Smith, all of them. They go out here and do some killing, do a bunch of killing. Ted, I told you, University of Washington, they should put a plaque to him up. See if they take that one down. Old Ted Bundy. Make sure everybody knows they got the Apple Cup today, man. Don't put Ted Bundy on the Apple Cup, man. They could it'll have the Satan vibe, right? Like he's in the Garden of Eden. So you have old Ted Bundy and he'll have he's already taken a bite out of it. Have old smiling Ted for the Apple Cup trophy. What you think? People who don't know, the Apple Cup is the brain damage football that I mentioned. The University of Washington, I'm not affiliated. They play Washington State. That's the Cougars. They're on the way other side of the state where it's like no black people. It's no black people in Washington State, period, but it's like no black people. I think Washington State is Pullman specifically where it is, and that's where the game is today. No, so the only black people in Pullman today, they are playing University of Washington, and I guess they got a few niggers at Washington State on the football team. But that's about, once you get away from the football stadium, put it on IG if you can find 10 niggers in Pullman once you get away from the football stadium. But put Ted Bundy on the Apple Cup trophy. Reminder, oh, yeah, Ted Bundy might have been at a few of the Apple Cup games. That's right. He was at Utah. That's right. Yeah. Do some killing. Jay Dahmer, do some killing. Especially do a lot of killing. We will remember your talk. Dill and Red, we will talk about you forever. If you're white, mind you. Now, if you're Negro, yeah. And even that, I forgot that was what I meant to add too. When they talk about the fascination that these white school shooters have for other white school shooters, that part gets left out too. They included, thankfully today, who does these school shootings? White people. Thank you. Their worship, religion of white supremacy, really, for these other school shooters, it's other white killers. That needs to be pointed out. They don't worship the Virginia Tech shooter. It's Dill. It's Reb. It's the Parkland shooter. You can just go down the line. It's white people. White, really, same thing that white people have been doing forever. Ted Bundy, Jesse James, they just pick out white killers. Make my day. That's Colorado. I said that, man. The make my day state. Get my gun and do some shooting. Colorado. Glad I'm not 2027. That might be a field trip because we are encroaching. It's almost 1 year. Those depositions will be public. What did Sue Klebold and Eric Harris's parents say way back when? What was there? Because they said they talked about for the Evergreen shooting that happened in Jefferson County this week. They said, are we going to charge the parents this time like we should have done with Sue Klebold? So everything is on the table. We'll have to see. Do your job, Jefferson County, since you dropped the ball, as they say, 25 years ago with Columbine, 26 at this point. Do your job. If you had arrested Sue Klebold and them way back when, maybe we wouldn't be at this point right now. Wonder if Sue Klebold, she came out and gave a speech this week. I got roast beef sandwiches for anybody, just spread a little love. And we don't want no blame because, we got brain problems and the teen brain is a strange place. Sue Klebold. Let's see. I found those websites. Oh, and I just want to include this is End Stage White Supremacy. I am submitting. There will be more of these types of shootings and public shooting type events, but it's school shootings and all of that. More of that as white people are more anxious, stressed about white genetic annihilation. Dr. Welsing predicted that there would be more violence of this sort, and I think these school shootings, they will just escalate and continue. That would be another reason, like, man, do we really want to send our child to school? Like, why? One of the victims in Jefferson County this past 7 days, he said, I think he was like a senior white child. He said, for the past 12 years, I plan my escape. Every time I go to a classroom, I already know, like, bang, door's right there. I get right there. They come in, do the shooting. I get out right there. I zig. I hit the hallway right there. And bang, I'm out of here. He said, I've been doing that for the past 12 years. Desmond Holly came on campus last week. I was ready. Now, do you want to have children in the system of white supremacy racism? And he probably grows up since where it happened. I grew up, I walk past Sue Klebold every day. Go past the Columbine Shrine and all. Shout to Mike Scholl. Because of our study of Columbine, we talked to Michael Scholl's dad and everything. Like, I wouldn't have even known who that was 2 years ago. Like, you could have given me all the guesses in the world. I wouldn't have known who that was. Victim of racism. Let's see. The last thing I'll get in, Demartravion Reed something about that bothered me, them just calling him Trey. Gus T is ignorant. I don't have a staff. I don't have, whole lots of folks that I can go to for pronunciation, or let's make sure that we get the name correct, or whatever the case may be. And I, stumbling and fumbling, Demartravion Reed. That's his actual name. Now, it might have been that a lot of people called him Trey and nicknames and all of that stuff. I get it. But I mean, if we are talking about a serious case, loss of a life, a death, I do at least think the journalists, serious professionals, his actual name should be said one time. And I've said that for years, because I've just noted that frequently, and especially with these white journalists, they will get so casual and comfortable, like they knew Trey. Like, wait a minute. His name is Demartravion Reed. You did not know him like that. You all were not friends to call him by a whole lot of nicknames and such. And I've just noted that, like I said, a lot of these white journalists, and he was killed or committed suicide or whatever, he's no longer with us, under the worst of circumstances. Like, hey, what is his actual legal name? Now, if he had been arrested, charged with raping a white woman, would it be all these nicknames, or would you give us his actual, I think would give his full legal name, middle name, all of that. He dies under suspicious circumstances. Let's get his actual name, not nicknames. Even if it's challenging and all that, we're going to do our best. Demartravion Reed. I think we can handle that. And they could ask the parents to make sure, can you say it, make sure we say his actual name, show respect for the family, his mom, all that. Anyway, I thought it was super important that hanging, even if it does turn out to be a suicide and the family's satisfied that that's what it is, which is not the case currently, but even if it turns out that that's what it is, I think it is important that the context for Demartravion Reed's death is, hey, now just in the past 7 days, HBCUs across the land have been getting all of these suspicious racist threats. That should be a part of the context of this death taking place. Now, Delta State in Mississippi, where Mr. Reed was found hanging, this is not an HBCU. Make sure, don't want any confusion. Delta State, not an HBCU. That said, hey, the HBCUs have been getting racist threats. This is a privileged black male, and I think there's a substantial history of black people, particularly black males, that point was brought out earlier this week, being found hanging under suspicious circumstances. We've talked about a number of cases on the program through the years. Khalid Flimban in California, Corey Ingham in Texas. As many cases as and these are recent cases. This is not even going all the way back into ancient history, into the 20th century, 1940s or I'm talking about things that happened while Obama was in White House. Some of these, Obama was in the White House second term. Lennon, Lacey, lengthy list. Like, we could just forget 1900s ever happened. We're just going to talk about things that happened in the 2000s. No problem. Lengthy list. Anyway, but I thought that was super important. And yet another reason, talk to your offspring about white supremacy, racism. Talk to your offspring about white supremacy, racism. Hopefully they'll get more details, thorough investigation, so the family gets all their answers. I will say as well, since at least the original autopsy, and I'll add, it's been reported that Colin Kaepernick, CTE, San Francisco 49ers, Colin Kaepernick has offered to pay for a second independent autopsy to find out what happened with Mr. Reed's death. Right on for Colin Kaepernick. Just saw that within the last 24 hours or so. But within this context, equally important, the threats at the HBCUs, Delta State, not an HBCU. Equally important, for about the past 5 years, there have been lots of reports, and we've talked about it explicitly, the rising numbers of suicide deaths for black people, and particularly younger black people in about this age group. Growing concern, COVID-19 exacerbated that. Another reason to talk to your offspring about the system of white supremacy and black mental health, the fact that we do not qualify for it. But wow. Frequently, nothing good to report, and that is devastating. 21 years old, and right at the beginning of the school year either. I mean, man, suspicion. Hopefully we'll get lots of good information. They'll do the second autopsy, and the family will get all of their questions answered, and we'll find out exactly what transpired down in Mississippi, of all places. Anyway, number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Again, if we have attempted parents, Demartravion Reed, did you all talk about that case, or the threats at the HBCUs, or so many components of white supremacy, racism, attempted parents? How have you navigated some of these discussions with your offspring? Or if you have not discussed some of these issues, why not? Important questions, important issues, in my view. Maybe even the judge in South Carolina and the material that he was looking at, that might even be one as well. You want to talk about misconduct and such, hey, that might be who you're going to see on the bench. Just something to think about. The number 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Let's see. Folks who dialed in, see if we have attempted parents as well. Folks who dialed in with a hand up should be with us. Proceed.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am. Lauren.
Evening, sir. Evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak. It seemed like there was a lot of segments about just violence, whether it was Charlie Kirk being killed or school shootings, people discussing children's brains, just a lot of violence this week. The white man, Tyler Robinson, who's the alleged shooter for Charlie Kirk, they said, is it possible he's someone on the political left? And then they talked about conflicting political messages, and they used the term accelerationist. I think they called him one, and they said that he had a nihilistic, apocalyptic view. And just all those terms they were using, it kind of made me think about the writings that were attributed to Peyton Gendron. And it was like a lot of question, answer, the writings. And they asked, Peyton Gendron, well, are you right-wing? And he said, depending on the definition, sure. Well, are you left-wing? Depending on the definition, sure. Are you a socialist? Depending on the definition. And I just, all these words, they're confusing. When they were talking about the black male who was found hanging at Delta State, the white people that were giving the story, they said the family or the attorney were demanding something. And when the lady from the family, I think it was his mom, but I'm not sure, when the lady from the family was talking, she said she was seeking answers, and that's not a demand. Also, it was just, I almost lost track. It seemed like so many violent segments. And there was a couple of days ago, there was an 18-year-old. His name was Ian Fotheringham. He was charged with threatening to shoot up a Falmouth school and was found competent to stand trial. They put him on like an ankle monitor, and allowed him to go home so he could go to doctor's appointments. But he was reported as a suspicious male. He was standing outside of an elementary school. It was called T-Ticket Elementary School. I mean, just planning not only to shoot up a school, but to shoot up elementary school students, that seems, well, I'm not going to say crazy. Ultra-violent? I don't know. They said he had some writings in his notebooks about the Columbine shooters, talked about his thoughts on the plan. He said killing himself is horrifying, but I wouldn't do it like the Columbine killers. So I don't know exactly what that means. That's all I have. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Said he wanted to terrorize the children. You know, for a moment, when she was saying that, she said, you know, for a second, it almost sounds like white people don't care about children. But she said, no, it almost sounds crazy, which Dr. Welsing did caution us about branding people who are classified as white, their conduct as crazy, which, hey, she did have reservations, but yeah, I almost thought it was appropriate there as well. And it reminded me of that white fella who just went and shot up the Catholic church school in Minnesota. He said, wanted to terrorize the children. Elementary school? Like, what? Why do you? What? Yeah. I did note the accelerationist, whatever that means, because we've heard that term before. Like, wow, what is accelerationist? And they said chaos. That was a C word they used, chaos. So you go to Peyton Gendron, are you a socialist? Are you a right-winger? Are you an extremist? Maybe. All of the above, They said spreading, you go out and say the fella, Tyler, who killed Charlie Kirk, allegedly, say, well, it was Antifa. Or he was a right-winger. He was a right-wing extremist, maybe. You go out and you give all this conflicting data. It's just chaos. Confusion is the other. And even beyond all that, again, same thing I say with the school shooters. Someone classified as white, left, right, Antifa, people classified as white being violent. Got it. They can go put up whatever meme, 3 fingers and Klan, and classified as white. Got it. End stage white supremacy. And even what they call the so-called accelerationists and nihilists, and because they were even saying they were saying something similar. White people, let's go attack the electric grids. Let's go attack the water supply. Yeah. It'll be total anarchy, and then we can get our guns and AR-15s, and we'll show them what's up. Who are you going to shoot with the AR-15s once the power goes out? Other folks who dialed in with a hand up.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir. Oh, we did hear you. Now I do not hear you. Are you still there, sir?
Yeah. Am I there now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. How you doing this evening, Gus?
Right poorly.
Okay. I got a question about the Sharday Robinson's case. I never really did. I was trying to do a little bit of research about the parents of the murderer of her. I remember I was listening to some of your coverage, and I remember you saying that he was unemployed. He could never hold a job down. So I was trying to figure out, was his parents paying his bills? Because I could never get any find any information about that.
Just transparency, as they say. That is not bringing up old stuff quite, but I was not prepped to come talk about Sade Robinson today, so that's not exactly all the fine details are not as in the forefront of my brain computer at this moment. But yes, Maxwell Anderson, coming to just talk about this surprisingly, yes, he did not keep robust employment in the Milwaukee area, which would include Racine. That was one of the locations where they talked about having the school shooters at 12. I suspect that's probably white children too, but they didn't identify. But yes, where he did not keep employment. The work, I think they said one job he worked like a week or 2 weeks or something really wacky. But I believe the house where Sade Robinson was killed, he lived there, but I believe his parents actually owned that property and allowed him to live there, sold it to him. I think I'd have to go back. That's what I mean about the like granular details. But if my memory is correct, it was somehow, I think his parents either owned the property and sold it to him, really cheap, hook up a relative, hook up a offspring type thing so he could stay there. So that, you could think of that if they sold him the house for like a penny or something goofy, like, oh, okay, so we're paying his bills. He has, a place to stay. And then he even has a form of making money because he would allow people to stay there and they could pay him rent, which he did. So we are like big time hooking him up if that's what happened. And I think it's something close to that anyway. And I'm sure they were giving him money, allowance, whatever the case may be, because it just seemed like he was a total lame race soldier. How did he maintain this lifestyle? And they certainly pitched in big time on his legal defense fund and all the money that it took for them to get Anthony Cotton. I think that was like hundreds of thousands of dollars for his legal defense. So yeah, it seems like if my memory is correct, like I think his dad was in insurance or something of that nature. They lived in a racially restricted region of Wisconsin and owned several properties. So it seemed like his dad had quite a bit of money and even money to shield him, because he'd had lots of legal troubles beforehand, before he killed Sade Robinson, this is all public record. And it seemed like he being his dad would just pay money so that he didn't go to jail or have any other serious criminal repercussions. They would just pay thousands of dollars, legal fees, whatever. And because he had felony convictions or felony charges prior to Sade. If this had been LeRoy with his criminal record, he would have been in prison before we even got to any of this. I seriously doubt he would have had the opportunity to kill anybody. If he had been LeRoy, and particularly LeRoy, who didn't have wealthy parents to help bail him out and allow him to be a freeloader and then killer.
Right. Also about the after the KKK Kirk got killed, I don't know why they try to say it's assassination, which I totally agree with that lingo. The schools that were being the HBCUs that were being threatened, a lot of these right wingers are trying to say because they're using hoax is like that they didn't get an actual threat, an initial threat call. So they're trying to say that they're trying to make it like it was made up, that the event really didn't happen, where people called in threats to the schools. Like the previous caller said, the wordings, and like you always say, they like to, use a lot of words to confuse us with a lot of nonsense a lot of times. So, but that's it, and I do thank you for taking my call.
For sure. I don't know. I guess people would have to tell me if they think what's happening at the HBCUs is that the same as what they will call swatting, because it's been a lot of that been happening right now too, where they'll just call like the elementary school or whatever and say, hey, there's a bomb, or Reb and Dill are going to come, shoot up the place in the next 10 minutes. It's been a lot of that too. And they'll call that swatting because there is no bomb, or Reb and Dill are not coming to shoot up the place, but the police response and all that for no reason. So they'll call that swatting. I don't know if they'll say, I'd have to go back to look. Most of the time, that's the newer, they'll say swatting. They've had swatting attacks. I guess that could qualify for what's happening at the HBCUs as well. I know they had to close classes down at, a number, I had a black parent send me some of the text messages that she got from the school, about, we got these threats and, this is what we're doing to ensure your child's safety. And, we're not doing, that, if you want to call it swatting, you want to call it a terroristic threat, I had to call to make sure my child is still alive. And then what safety measures have been taken to make sure that they are okay. Dylan Roof doesn't storm their campus. Man, that is nothing to minimize. That would be another illustration why black people do not qualify for mental health. I can't be thinking about, oh man, make sure I get an A on my calculus test, get on this, get ready, get everything together so I can graduate early, don't have to waste all that money staying here. No, I got it. Is it going to be safe for me to leave class today? Do I need to? Oh no. Even in that, being in a group, that doesn't help. That just means there's more casualties. Don't qualify for mental health at all. I certainly didn't call it a hoax. Like I said, we can't do class, and now I got to think about I got to sound like my sick white brother in Colorado. What's the safest way if somebody comes to shoot up the campus? Safest way for me to escape? That ain't no hoax. Any hoodles. Much obliged, sir. Words are important. Words are important. Let's see. Folks can visit the website Sade'sVoiceFoundation.com. Sade'sVoiceFoundation.com. Did you hear that reckless driving in Milwaukee? Didn't I tell you? I saw the whole time I was there. They will run you. They will run in your living room. What to do? What to do? What to do? If the police don't do nothing, it just gets worse. That's how it got to where we are right now, which might be true. Because it's bad. It is bad. Drive through your living room in a minute, man. Let's see. Number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Do not wait till the last moment, especially if we have attempted parents. If you try to talk to your offspring about any of these episodes and such, the school situation for sure. If you need a reminder of why to talk to your offspring, there you go. Let's see. Give folks a moment to get there if they have additional thoughts, ideas to share. Again, the Catherine Massey Book Club, Maria Eftimiades, The Sins of the Mother. We're about halfway through the book, maybe a teaspoon more, but if you did not, I guess, investigate, if you were alive at the time and didn't seriously pay attention to, or maybe you've forgotten the Susan Smith case, or maybe if you're younger and that is ancient history and you never heard about it in detail, Wow, you can learn quite a bit about the system of white supremacy racism and even that, what shall I say, blasphemous phrase that was uttered previously. White people do not care about children. Great illustration for many, many reasons. Even, I might say, great illustration of why non-fiction. There are so many books and events about white supremacy racism that we are poorly and I mean all kinds of ways, poorly informed about. I think if we did a little bit more serious stuff, not YouTube and Netflix and screen time and an entertainment serious study, I think we could make some serious progress, get this here problem solved. The problem, the system of white supremacy racism. And quickly, just a little bit of focus and being serious, precise with our use of words. Any hoodles. But the book club, Catherine Massey Book Club, Fridays, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, about halfway through the book. I think a little bit more. I think we're getting to the trial phase now that they found out about this lying wench. The trial phase, which reveals even more white supremacy racism, and the fact that the trial for this white chick was going on at the same time as the O.J. Simpson trial. Any hoodles. Let's see. I'll give folks about 5, see if they have any other thoughts, observations to share, any parents about what, and right at the beginning of the school year, seems like there's, because I think within the last 2 years they had a attempted shooting in North Florida near an HBCU, and the white shooter, he just went to a Family Dollar. That's what I mean about it. I think there'll be more of these types of incidents, violent public incidents of violence, mass shootings, and all the rest of it, as white genetic annihilation. If that is for real, and if you have more white people that's, in the forefront of their brain computer, what they're thinking about, regardless of whether this is based on actual fact or not, if you have white people responding as though this is a problem or a concern or a fear for them, oh man, yes, I would expect and fear there will be more of these types of incidents, and I mean all of it, at the school level, just going to shoot up the mall or wherever else, some sort of public event, the attacks on the electric grid, all of it. I would expect more of that if this is, and even spreading maybe to other parts of the world, because you have white people all over the known universe who are, hand-wringing about there's too many dark people. We don't have enough white babies being born. So let's see. Oh, and the hate crime at Meharry Medical College. We have M.A., longtime listener, investor. She doesn't get to participate live because no count lazy victim went to med school of all things. Now Dr. M.A., after all those years of hard work and racism from her direct testimony, but Meharry Medical College, that is specifically for Negroes, unless my memory is really bad, Meharry in Tennessee, like white people went and deliberately, we're going to get rid of Negro doctors. I mean, they got all the reports talking about we don't have black doctors and how having black doctors makes an enormous impact for black health. When you can go see somebody who might not practice racism against you, might actually observe the Hippocratic Oath, as they say. But white people, and I mean, this is black ink fact, white people deliberately We are going to get rid of the Negro colleges. That's why you don't even have black medical colleges. Meharry is like one of the few, and they are being terrorized. What is that even for the next generation of doctors? Like, oh man, I was going through school so I could be a heart surgeon, help some of the black people fight back against hypertension, high blood pressure, all the rest of it. Oof, he had to miss that whole week of class because they were threatening, terrorizing, calling us, they had Negro written up everywhere, and we'll kill you Negroes, and all the rest of it. And oh man, I was scared to even go to the library that week. Like, man, that kind of mess. And that was the beginning of the school year too. Like, put things, what they say, ominous beginning. Indeed, and that's for black doctors. We don't even have that many black doctors. Ain't no accident, man. Ain't no accident. But like I said, unless I'm mistaken, I believe in Tennessee, I don't think President Trump was talking about sending the National Guard to Meharry Medical College. We're going to make sure we done did all this investment in STEM and these our young colored folks and invested all this time and energy and money so that they can be doctors, healers. We got your back. Federal Guard be there as long as we need them to be so you all can be safe. You go and get to class. Do some hard work. No. Again, that's what I said, like, attempted parents, like, wow, it would be talk to your children. Maybe even I would show them, like, and even the college level, these things happening at the HBCUs and the medical college and all of that, like, hey, this is the system of white supremacy, racism, and really, this is the work environment. And I mean, acutely so. If you're talking med school, this is your work environment. This is your job that you're having to dealing with. And having to deal with racism acutely, like racism impacting directly if you can even go to your job site. We might have to close this down. Close it down. Why? Racism, white supremacy. It ain't even safe. And I say that also being safe. It is inherently unsafe. And that's something painfully you will have to explain to your offspring. The system of white supremacy, racism, it is not safe. It is not safe. White people are dangerous. You even have to say it flagrant. Yeah, hey, maybe you don't have to say. I can't tell my child white people don't care about children. Okay, no problem. I would at minimum say white people are dangerous. They have a lot of power, and apparently many of them practice white supremacy, racism. That makes them dangerous. Whew. Again, facts. Just you evaluate the evidence. Is that true? Be truthful with your offspring. That's been a major problem. We have not been truthful. We, in fact, have seemed to withhold truth from our offspring. Even truth about how weak we are. We should stop doing that. You can't be truthful with your offspring. Maybe you should rethink, do you really need to have these children? Bring another generation of children classified as black so they can be lied to and confused about the system of white supremacy, racism? We already got enough of that. We don't need any more of that. Any hoodles. See, other folks have *61. Anything else they need to share? Suggestions, attempted parents, and how they have dealt with all of this, addressing their offspring and all the rest of it. Let's see. Folks might be spectating. Hopefully we don't have attempted parents who are spectating. Hopefully not. I will say quickly before we wrap up for this here week, I did see last week, or I guess it continued through the past few days or so, where there was Jubilee. They had a prize fighting contest between a privileged black male and a male, I think he's a suspected racist white man born in Mexico, the so-called Hispanic, see, And the Negro male won. Now, we've seen this before. We've talked about all of this. I posted, we had Dr. Gerald Horn as a guest on the program. We talked about the bitter sweet science. We talked about, long history and Negroes fighting a white fighter and becomes racial theater and all of that. Seen all of this before. I saw a number of, looked like they could have been people classified as black, either cheering Negro triumph and or saying that they felt non-black people, so-called Mexicans or others, were angry that the Negro triumphed and all. I mean, entertainment. Again, I say that consistently. And that Dr. John Hoberman's phrase, racial theater, where you have these kind of entertainment events, often something athletic, where it'll be niggers versus white people type of a thing, and it becomes just a kind of spectacle, and we can chat, and isn't that funny, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it's just entertainment. And in this situation, even though the Negro won, I guess, brain damage notwithstanding, I said, beating a Mexican does not make you a man on the plantation. Not even close. And then, particularly, this dude might be a Mexican, but I think he is classified as white. The black prize fighter who won, he beat a person who I think is a white man, happens to be born in Mexico. The white Mexican, he earned $150 million in defeat. The Negro male earned $10 million in victory. I would have rather lost. My math add up correctly, like losing was the way to go. I'm all right. I just have to go look at my bank account and whoo, man, long as I didn't get too much CTE, we are all right. That then once I saw the earnings, that just further confirmed in my mind, ain't no such thing as Hispanic. It is only, are you classified as white? Because apparently, even if you are born in Mexico, Cuba, pick wherever else, Honduras, wherever else they speak Espanol, maybe even Spain directly. That does not matter at all. Are you classified as white? That is the big one. And if the answer is yes, oh my goodness, even in defeat, my sick white brother, buena suerte, buddy. We're going to have the best of luck. $150 million of luck. Man. That's what I mean. Like, no, ain't even nothing to celebrate in the system of white supremacy. How great can you be? I said that at the beginning. How great can you be in a system of white supremacy racism? Anywho, much obliged for the folks who tuned in. Hopefully, attempted parents, you can let us know, because it's brand new school year. So did you speak with your offspring? Have you talked with them about racism, the school shootings, what it means to be white judges and or white teachers, sexually molesting Mary Kay? It's so much. Like, man, have you been talking with your offspring about all of this? What have those conversations sounded like this year acutely? Because it seems like it's been so much, but let us know. I know we've had programs where we've talked to non-white children before during COVID-19 and what they thought about some of these events that were taking place. We certainly could do a repeat if folks think it would be constructive. Let me know if there are non-white offspring and or I guess non-white parents who would be interested in chatting it up about a, what shall I say, chaotic, racist beginning to the new school year. That's it. hopefully constructive, worthwhile of your Saturday evening as we bid adieu to summer 2025 and autumn on the plantation. Sobriety would be best. Really, make sure I say the name correctly one more time. Demartravion Reed. Sobriety would be best. And just for 1,000% clarity, I say this at the end of every program. Sobriety would be best. In no way suggesting or intimating that Mr. Reed was under the influence or anything like that, because I haven't seen anything of that nature. He could have been drinking, spring water all day long with a twist of lemon. No idea, but just saying in an environment that is so dangerous where you literally suspiciously have Negroes falling out of trees. Sobriety would be best so that we can be alert, aware of things that are happening around us. You might bump into a pregnant female. Role model. Oh my goodness, you want all the oxygen you can get. You and your child, be sober, be healthy so you can breastfeed, because that means if you're pregnant, you can be breastfeeding too. So that means that's like years that you're going to have to be THC free. So, yeah, let me go and put that out so I can be around you, everybody's safe, and we can move on sober, high-functioning brain computer so that we can solve the problem, the system of white supremacy, racism. Creator, we ask that you remind us, stop saying not all white people are racist. Remind us, stop name calling people classified as black. Stop gossiping. Stop producing throwaway offspring to be raped by Mary Kay or drowned by Susan Smith or other white women. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. No problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.